Good evening, everyone. Tonight, extra special guest. His box is long. His name is John, but he's no Mary Sue.
Yes, I'm not.
Welcome back,
Yeah,
John's
I'm
Longbox.
not perfect like a Mary Sue. Yeah, yeah. So
Uh,
good to be back.
uh, yeah, so uh,
I'm looking up.
since the last time we talked, everyone has gotten your issue number one of Heroic Tales, starring the Patriarch.
Right.
You got a lot of feedback. Now, issue two is, I guess you should say, on sale or funding or however you want to term it.
I say pre-sale. You know what I mean? Like
Pre-sale.
it's the easiest way to explain it to people who don't know. Yang and I were talking. I'm a construction worker, so when I tell guys at work, they don't understand crowdfunding. They don't understand what Kickstarter or Fund My Comic or Indiegogo. So I just say it's on pre-sale. You could order it. And okay, that seems so. I think that's the best normie word. It's on pre-sale right now. Renzo is about 55% done. I'm a lot more organized this time than I would. Like, what I didn't know what I didn't know the first time around, if that makes sense. Like I didn't know pre-press was a step. You know what I mean? I just thought, oh, Renzo draws everything. I just send the files to the printer. Nope. You gotta put them all. You gotta talk to the printer, get everything aligned so that the printer can actually print, make sure that the pages aren't, inverted. I didn't know all of that stuff. So, now I got a good team. I hired a couple of people I shouldn't have hired. I hired a couple of people that were shysters.
You've all been there.
You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
almost paid a few people. The spidey sense went off. I made some mistakes. I went way over budget. And I'm trying to think what else. But now I got a team. I know who to go to. I just got flustered for a second. And I'm happy with the people that I work with. Like Renzo's my artist. That's what does the kids say? Ride till you die. I want to work with Renzo forever.
Yeah.
Oscar's my colorist. When I first hired Oscar, I said, this is how I want it colored. And he did exactly what I said, but I realized I didn't know what I was talking about. So I paid, and he was just like, well, I did what you told me. And I was like, yes, you did. So I had to pay again to get it recolored, because it wasn't his fault. He did what I told him to do. Things like that. I'm trying to think. I hired one guy for logos. And 6 months went by and he never delivered. So then I hired Nick Axe to do logo, and he did them in 3 days. So that was
nice.
Good. Yeah. So I'm pretty happy with the people that I'm working with now. I was like, what do you mean, Renzo? You don't draw logos? He's like, I'm an artist. I don't. So I just assumed Renzo would draw the logos.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I got to hire a logo guy. But now I got logo guys. I got a pre-press guy. I got a guy who will make my campaign page, because I don't know how to use a computer. I didn't know about Google Drives, and I could just make you an editor, and then you have access to my files. I didn't know how to transfer files. I hired Pat Broderick to do a cover. That was actually the first cover that was done, and he was like, all right. He mailed me the original art, but then he sent me a file, and I was like, how do I get this? I just downloaded it and I sent it. This file's no good. He sent me a transfer file, but I just downloaded a preview image thinking that was good enough, and be like, this is gonna be blurry. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I deleted that. So then I had to go and scan it. You know what I mean? There was just so much I didn't know how to do it. And believe me, I was up until 4 o'clock in the morning some nights trying to figure out how to move files around, how to, put all I'll get the pencils from Renzo, and then I was physically, not physically, but I was sending them to Oscar to color or Daniel to color, and then I realized if you get a Google Drive or just make them editors, they could do it all them. You know what I mean? Everything is getting smoother and smoother. So needless to say, I probably spent 50% more money than I needed to spend on issue one. So the way I'm going to I want to do things is I lay out the money for the first issue. So every penny came out of my pocket. And now the money I made for the first issue is paying for the second issue. So the second issue is coming out, even if I make no money, because it's already paid for. You know what I mean? what
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
doing now, the second issue is I'm raising money for the third issue. So please support me because I can't make a third issue on $1,000.
yeah.
So
The
as much
all
as I
stick
streamline
figure
the
alternate
process,
universe
yeah, as much
issue.
as I streamline, it's time for a haircut. I'm looking at my crazy beard. I,
It's all right. It's been a crazy week for you.
yeah. So, but it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. Um, so far the feedback has been mostly positive. I got a couple of people made videos of criticizing, and for the most part I agree with everybody.
Criticizing issue 1 or 2.
Yeah, issue one. Nobody can criticize issue two yet; it's not out yet. But they were criticizing issue one, and for the most part, it's been pretty civil, and I agree. I was even in their comments live. I was like, "Yeah, you're right," and they were like, "What? He's here? Yeah, you're not nasty. You're not mean. you're." And then I had a couple of criticism that were like talking about me. What does that have to do with my comic book? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, you're always going to find people like that,
yeah,
and the first one was pretty successful, especially for an indie creator for the first book. It
right.
did rather well. Speaking of the business aspect, so not to get too political, however, everybody in the comic and gaming spaces are kind of freaking out over tariffs, and I'm just wondering for you, do you think that will affect you specifically and sort of the indie industry in general going
It
forward?
well, if you go to China, because there's a
Oh, it's
couple
bad.
there's a couple of printers that we use.
Yeah.
My printer's in Michigan, so that's not going to affect that.
Oh,
So
okay.
I use Comics Wellspring. Customer service was great. I mean, I was calling them every day for like a week, crazy person, because I was determined to get my comic on time. You know what I mean? And I made a blunder with transferring files. So, I was like, freak. And they were super nice. They were pleasant. So I'm sticking with them. They're in Michigan. They sent me boxes of comics. Not one comic was damaged. Not one comic was damaged.
Nice.
So the service. So it's not going to affect me. I'm not going to China. But there is a printer, Mixum, that's in China.
Mm-hmm.
And
There's a few.
yeah, and I will say that the comics that I got look great, but something told me don't go to China. Like, I'm a blue collar American construction worker. I don't want to. If I can help it, I want all my stuff to be American made. So, I mean, the only thing I did overseas was these coins are from Norway. And they
Yep.
took forever, so that might affect the price. I didn't even think of that until you made me think of it. But who knows? But Oscar and Renzo are in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think tariffs will affect that. And in the
Yeah.
printing and I shipped, but the shipping is going to be expensive, I bet. And the funny thing is the American shipping is not that bad. It's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, but it's shipping overseas is crazy.
Right. Like if anybody's watching, because I know you do role playing, maybe they're not comic book people.
Mm-hmm.
This is like the standard for a comic book. It's called the Gemini mailer. They're about $1. So I had like 300 sales. So I bought like 3 bundles of these. And my buddy Scott has an account because he has a business. So I used his account. So you know what I mean? Everything you can to save a penny.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do it. And then you send these out. But anywhere in the States, that $10 shipping will cover it. But you go to Britain, it's not that bad. Scotland wasn't that bad. What was the worst? It was Canada.
Yep.
Because I had a lot of people from Canada. In Canada, like I'm charging $20 shipping overseas. It was on average like $28 to ship to Canada. So I was, so I'm so grateful to some of the people in New Jersey that I was only spending $4 shipping. But they paid 10. So, like they subsidized these socialists in Canada. You know what I mean? It was
well,
it was cheaper to send to Scotland than to Canada.
Yeah, and well, some of those European countries also have import fees too. When I was doing my campaign, I had some people. I think mine was 65 for the physical book in the U.S., and I think I did 95 for overseas, just to make sure, I hit the right price. And there were some people, they're like, oh, look, I really want the book version because you get all these extra modules with it.
My books are
But
better
they
than
said,
files.
they said, but $95 once it gets here, I'm gonna have to pay like another $30 for an import fee. I was like, damn,
Well, you
it's
got
like, all right, I
right. You got to
understand
vote
why you don't
better,
want to
buddy.
pay 120.
You got to vote better.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Sorry, Europeans.
Mo-
Uh,
most of the people, most of the overseas got digital files. I don't blame them. They're paying $20 shipping for a $10 comic. I don't
yeah.
blame them. And it dragged me kicking and screaming. I did not want to do a digital comic, but I'm glad I did. And it was great because every time you hear like a ping on my phone, oh, you got a sale. Oh, it's a digital comic. After the campaign was over and I'm making digital, I'm like, at that point, it was just free money because I just sent the file. So I'm glad I did it. And I'm doing it. Anybody listening, you could get issue 1 and 2 for $10. You could get issue 2 for $6. So if you missed out on issue, digital tier. Michael Dale, make shipping great again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and another thing, I had Mandy Summers was a guest on my channel, and I just started asking her, and she said use pirate ship. So I looked into it, so I used pirate. Oh, this is another mistake. Oh my God. So my first week, this will be all the mistakes. Do the opposite of this, ladies and gentlemen. Learn from my mistakes. I wanted to take off work, and I'm a construction worker. We have what's called furlough. So like when a job slows down or in the winter time or whatever, for whatever reason, they tell us at May what the furlough is going to be for the following year. So this year we have 8 weeks, but that year we had 10 weeks. So things are getting better. The furlough's closing up. But I got to a car accident and broke my neck. So I was out of work for 6 months. So that used up all my furlough time, sick time, and everything like that. So when I came back to work, I didn't have any time off. I wanted to use furlough to just wake up, drink my coffee, be in my pajamas, and just box up boxes and do that all. But I was going to work, coming home, and fulfilling. So I was only going to the post office on Saturdays. So on Saturdays, I was showing up with like $100. The post office guy got annoyed at me and said, you could schedule a pickup. So I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So I scheduled like every 2 days a pickup. And he goes, and we'll give you boxes too. You don't have, because I was going to Home Depot and buying boxes because I had pint glasses. I couldn't put them in Gemini mailers. So I was like, oh man. I was like, thank you. So guys helped me out. So I got boxes from the post office, did it all. They came, they picked up like 87 boxes. That was like, oh, this is beautiful. Shipping is fun. The next day they brought them all back because I used priority boxes.
Oh.
You know what I mean? But they were all paid for on pirate ships. So I was like,
oh,
and the post office was like, we can't reimburse you. I remember it was $187 worth of shipping. And contrary to popular belief, there's not a lot of profit in comics. So I was just like, $187 is really the only profit I'm going to make on this comic. So I was livid.
Yeah.
So I was like, what can we do? And the post office was like, you're going to have to take everything out of the boxes, put them in, and then like you could go to pirate ship and reprint everything. And then me being a stupid idiot, I said, or I could just cover everything up in wrapping paper and you don't know it's priority boxes and do it again. And the guy goes, yeah, but if you get caught. So I bought deli paper, wrapped them all up like brown, taped the hell out of them because I didn't want to take them all out, and then just reprinted all the stickers. They came and picked them up, and it's been months. Not one person said the comic was damaged. Not one person said my glasses were damaged. That's pretty good. And I still have 5 people from Kickstarter that never filled out their survey and never got their comics and never complained.
Yeah.
One comic came back, and another mistake to watch out for is on pirate ship. You take your cursor and you go over everything and you copy it, and then you just hit paste and it fills in everything, but it doesn't change the country. So if you're hanging out though in Canada, say you put it in there, Canada. And then the next person, Yang Yao Zhou in Glass, in Scotland, boom, it still says Canada. And then you print out the sticker, and then it goes to Canada, and then it comes back 2 months later. So 2 people got late ones because of that. That was my fault. So now whenever I change the country, I have to make sure. And what gets me mad is, in Pirate Ship, when you hit everything in and you hit print, it makes a green line like across the map. But I always do the I did the Indiana Jones theme song like 300 times. As the line was filled. I should have watched it go to the wrong country, but I just watched it go to Canada instead of Scotland. But I guess I was in a hurry to do the next one. So, couple of things. Don't pay anybody up front. I didn't do that, but I had a couple of friends that paid like for 5 pages to show that they were a good boss, and then they never got those pages.
Yep.
So don't pay anybody up front, but do pay them quick, because you want to keep your talent happy, and watch where you're shipping everything, and don't use priority boxes and then use ground shipping in the post office. The post office will return everything and be mad at you. So like I said, I made every possible mistake. I sent my comic to the printers without dialogue balloons because I sent the wrong file. Get a proof copy. The proof copy costs $40, but it's, you pick up stuff when it's physically in your hand. You know what I mean? Rather than reading it on.
Yeah.
And
way different.
Yeah, it's like a different process in your mind. At least it is for me. And this time around, I actually hired a proofreader because I found 3. I found 3 typos. One of them right on the first page. I opened up the comic book, gave it to my wife, and right away she went like this and pointed to a typo. So I found 3, and one other person found 3. Doesn't mean there's not more, but I found, and it just drives me nuts.
Yeah. I mean, I've had that too. I have some preview files for backers of my campaign. I wrote things. I've gone through it, but I'm horribly dyslexic, so I hired an editor.
Oh, are you really dyslexic, or is this just one of these things like?
No, I am.
Okay.
And and of course I get some comments like, "Hey, I opened to this page and it's like this is spelled wrong," which is especially bad when you have like fantasy.
I was gonna say, yeah,
things, and like you're spelling them. You got a name that's not a real word, so you're spelling it different in different places. It's terrible.
Yeah. And on the first page of my comic, there's a bad guy called Boss Moxie. The first time his name is mentioned, I spelt it with the Y. The second time his name is mentioned, I spelt it IE. You know what I mean? So that I picked up and got fixed before it went to print.
Oh, that's good.
But that's not one of the typos. And Michael Dare says, "I'm a proud owner of issue 1 and the pint glass." Cool. Did you have a beer?
Yeah, I mean, the question is really, did drinking out of that pint glass turn you into a superhero?
Yeah, there you go.
If you drink enough out of that pint glass, you probably would think you
my friend Brian, I sent the pint glass to Portland, Oregon. It made it there intact. And he said he took it out of the box. His wife said, "Before you drink out of it, let me wash it." He was like, "Okay." And she broke it.
So, oh, no.
I said, "That's on you, man. You got to buy another one."
No, she has to buy another one.
Yeah, that's what he goes, "John, we almost got divorced." Just what the patriarch would want, a divorce.
So speaking of the patriarch, Heroic Tales issue 1 was all about the patriarch. Was not an origin story. We actually got to see him in his prime, in his glory, helping out Science City, cleaning up, if you will, for the day. So I know originally your plan was in each issue it would feature just a different superhero. So how did you you got some feedback that people really like the patriarch.
Right.
So how do you balance that when you're making a new book where people really like the first thing, but you kind of got to introduce new stuff, and you only have so many pages to do it?
Right. Well, first off, the name of the comic is Heroic Tales, not the patriarch. So originally it was just, it's kind of inspired by Astro City, Kirk Basick's comic. So I was like, all right, I'll tell 1 or 2 comics about a story or a character, and then I'll move on. But I also didn't know if I was ever going to make it to another issue. You know, it's crowdfunding. What if it bombed? You know, what if I messed up so terribly? What if it was too difficult? Things like that. So I was just like, I don't want to tell an origin story every time I introduce a new character, and then it might not get to the next issue. So I said, let me just tell a fun story about the patriarch. And people seem to like them. Like they like the fact that I've been responding to like this whole toxic masculinity thing. Like I wanted there to be like, you know, there's nothing wrong with men. There's nothing wrong with fathers. You know, so the patriarch is a good father. He's a loving husband. He's a beloved superhero. Like he's a farmer. And drinking from Devil's Pint Glass made me promote one. There you go. There you go. So, you know, I wanted all the positive stuff that like we've been barraged with all this negative stuff about manliness and masculinity. So I wanted to make a positive masculinity. And people like, oh, that's a good character. He's, you know, I like the way he looks. It's important. So I'm like, if I don't put him in issue 2, am I shooting myself in the foot? You know, so you got to strike while the iron's hot. Like I keep thinking of boy Zach with Jawbreakers. He made Jawbreakers. Everybody loved it. Then he followed it up with absolute garbage, you know, for years.
Yeah.
And then the second issue, he killed off all his characters. I'm like, dude. So I'm learning from other people, you know, learn from the stories that I just told. So I'm like, all right, so issue 2 is going to be the patriarch again. So, but now I'm thinking I got enough patriarch stories. I could spin him off into his own. So my next campaign is going to be the patriarch number 1. And it's going to be all the patriarch, and it's going to be his origin story. I was planning on telling the origin story of the patriarch in his 3rd appearance anyway. So this will be his 3rd appearance. So, but the thing is, it's a whole book now. So I got to take half a book and so I'm adding a villain to it. So for those of you who don't know, this issue came out with a certain day. It was Father's Day. What is it? July 16th or June 16th, 2024. That's the specific day. Well, the patriarch's been a superhero for 20 years at that point. So this next comic, Heroic Tales, is literally the next day. It's, you know, it's the next day. You just see, like, he just doesn't get a rest. And and then the 3rd appearance is going to be the day after that. But then, like all comic books, he's going to go into a flashback, and you're going to see a young, skinny, beardless Jim Kelly before he was the patriarch, and, you know, all the events leading up to him being a superhero. And then the you know, issue 2 is going to be him fighting another, like a Batman type, you know, a classic. Is it a misunderstanding or is it a real reason to fight? But it's going to be 2 superheroes battling out for a real reason. So I got a bunch of stories, and I'm like, but I'm never going to get to all these other characters in Heroic Tales. So Heroic Tales issue 2, I'm introducing Mary Sue, who's another superhero. Like I was kind of goofing around with the idea of, like, every time any woman characters, you know, whether it's real or not, any woman character is accused of being a Mary Sue. Like, you know, and for those of you who don't know, a Mary Sue is I think the legend is in like the early 70s, somebody was writing fan fiction, and her real name was Mary Sue, and she created a character called Mary Sue Kirk, and she was the daughter of Captain Kirk, and she was the hottest woman in Starfleet, and she was the most able captain in Starfleet, and literally everybody else on her Enterprise bridge just validated how cool she was, and it became a term. It became a term for a self-insert perfect character. Today, I think we could all agree that Rey from Star Wars is a Mary Sue. You know, she was perfect at the beginning. So I'm like, what if I just named because I had a female character, and I'm like, everybody's going to call her a Mary Sue. So I was just like, well, I'm just going to call her Mary Sue and beat you to the punch, because I wanted her to have ultimate powers, but to spoil, because I always spoil everything, she could rewrite possibilities. You know what I mean? So if you got hit by a car, she could undo it, and now you didn't get hit by the car, but that meant that car went someplace else. So she's not smart enough to see all the possibilities. All she knows is she saved you from getting hit by a car. Now, did that car hit somebody else? Did that guy recover and everything's cool? So every time it's a butterfly effect. So she is perfect. She has the ultimate power, but she can't see the possibilities. And I, I'm really nervous if people are going to understand what she did in her first appearance, because she she doesn't know she has these powers yet. This is her origin,
Oh.
and she rewrites reality unbeknownst to her. And then her second appearance, which will be Heroic Tales 3, is going to deal with the consequences of what she's done. And I could see a lot of people are going to read this and be like, but she didn't do anything. I'm like, that's because reality was rewritten, so it's not like, well, maybe later on I'll have it like things go backwards or whatever, but I kind of wanted it to be, so that's
A little more subtle.
she's perfect. She's cute. She's got like super PhDs. She's intelligent. She's wealthy. You know what I mean? She's a good girl. She doesn't drink. She doesn't smoke. She's and I love it because you can't say that she's my self-insert. I'm not a petite, beautiful little Chinese girl. So her name really is Mary Sue. Sue is a Chinese last name. So her family came to Flushing, New York in the 50s. Her grandparents fled Mao Zedong. They were Roman Catholic, and they convert, be killed, or leave. They chose leave, and came to America penniless, started a little corner convenience store, and then their son turned it into Sue Mart. So, instead of Kmart, there's Sue Mart in this world. And there she goes. Now she's born into wealth, goes to school, and becomes a super genius. So she's going to be like the smart one.
Okay.
She's going to be like the Reed Richards. She's the most intelligent superhero in my world. Patriarch is clever, but he's not smart. He doesn't build gadgets. He's not even as smart as Spider-Man. I would say like the Patriarch is maybe a Ben Grimm intelligence level. You know what I mean? Clever, good tactician, but like, yeah.
I was going to ask, will she like sort of become the Iron Man of the team, or like the one who arms them up, and gives them all the fancy gadgets?
No, she's not an inventor either, but she's she's a scientist.
Okay.
She's more of well, you see, she's hired as to work on this magic science, comic book science. They just in my world, they discovered the counter spectrum. So it's electromagnetic spectrum counter. So if our electromagnetic spectrum is like this one goes like this. So it's all those wonderful energies, and we do not have the ability to detect them. So when you're just like, somebody's thinking about me, we can't measure that. But on the counter spectrum, if we had other instrumentation, we could figure out like there's mental waves. There's the counter spectrum starts with infra white, and it goes to ultra dark, and there's all of these different that you see in the comic book. So like ultra dark would be like that Dark Force, Green Lantern kind of energy. So they're studying in that, and they're realizing that is the medium that transmits superpowers. And of course things go awry. So that's what she's gonna like if there's a bad guy around, she's not gonna be like, hold on, here's the gadget that solved. She'll be the one that comes up with like, this is how it should work logically. This is how, like, I want her to, I know it's like a weird thing, but I want her to be like more of a scientist than a gadgeteer.
Very cool. So with the sort of shift where the Patriarch is basically going to get his own series, is it going to be like a twofer in the future, do you think, where like you can basically back both at the same time, or you want to do like every 6 months one? Or
see, that's what I don't know yet. Because I want Renzo to draw everything. So I want Renzo to draw the Patriarch, but he also wants to draw other characters. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
he draw 2 books, and if he draws 2 books, he said, because he's finished with most of his other obligations. So he said he can speed up, but I don't know what that means yet. So the next book I want to do is Patriarch 1, and then I'm thinking, if because I delivered my first comic pretty much on time. It was slightly late. It was 3 weeks late because I messed up the files. If I could deliver this one on time, I think people will give me the grace that I can have two campaigns at the same time. You know what I mean? This one's backed. This one's being shipped
Yeah,
out.
for sure.
So that's what I would like to do. Or I could just wait and have two books at once. I don't know. That's something I have to figure out. But Heroic Tales is going to be two characters. And it's always going to be a flip book. I like that. Like next issue is going to be Mary Sue and the Raven. The Raven is like a dark anti-patriarch. He's violent and stealthy. He's a Batman type. And then issue 4, I don't even want to tell anybody. It's going to be time travel and I hate to say this because I hate the multiverse, but it's going to be the multiverse. But it's going to be how the multiverse really would work. There's no other patriarch. The laws of physics are different in other dimensions, so it's impossible for there to be another patriarch. So I want to explain time travel, and I want to explain the multiverse in issue 4. And I'm so excited because I really do think that's going to be my breakout character. That's going to be the character everybody likes,
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, I like that idea of like character gets an issue in Heroic Tales, like a sort of an intro story there. Not necessarily like their origin, but they get the first story there, and then the next issue they get another story while you then introduce yet another character. I think to me that kind of seems like a problem in a lot of comics, especially in the indie space, where it's like, okay, either we're always following the same character in the same book, or we hear about this character and then like maybe 5 years later I'll see him again. Like if I like him, I want more. So it seems like a good way to split the difference between give people more of what they want, and then also, like let's say everybody loves Mary Sue, and then in issue 3 they're really happy with seeing her again. Then you could judge the popularity and figure out like, oh well, maybe she needs her own sort.
I don't know how many books I could do. There's only one Renzo. I'm so anal retentive. I want all the art to look the same.
Yeah.
But if they sell, and I can find an artist, like I've seen a couple of artists that are in my price range that I really like to look. So I told them, if things go well, I will. But one of the things I would like to do is like, Renzo draws the patriarch, and Renzo's going to pick, for Heroic Tales.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want one? Do you want the other? Or do you want both? And then have another artist, almost like trying them out. Can we work together? Maybe it'll help get the comic out faster. So I already have a couple of artists lined up for other stories.
Cool.
Like I think of a character and I'm like, oh, that guy's art would be perfect for this character. So that's kind of the way I think about it. Like I think of the name, and then I think of the powers and everything like that, and then the art. So I have like a question type character. He's going to be like a fedora wearing conspiracy theory guy, and I really want to do this comic because it's just going to show you how insane the conspiracies are. You can't tell from issue 1, but it's all conspiracy theories. But this guy's going to tie them all together, and he's the private eye that fixes everything. And then I already know who I want to draw him. I was like, your art would be perfect for this, and I kind of want it in black and white. Like,
ooh, that'd be interesting. I have a question though. So with conspiracy theories specifically, it's like to some extent, it's like the Onion website, or what was that, the Babylon Bee? When reality gets so absurd that you can't tell, like, okay, is this actually a joke, or did this did this really happen today? Especially since 2020, when it seems like most of our conspiracy theories are coming true. How much harder does that make it for you as a writer to come up with something that, like, okay, it's got to sound like a little bit plausible, but it's got to be so far like, no, this totally won't come true?
Well, if you read issue number 1, there was a backup story called The Suit, and it was about a happy-go-lucky, happily married guy who's breaking into politics, and he finds a suit, and I know it sounds goofy, but the suit is possessed by the devil, and he puts the suit on, and the suit gives him a choice, and he chooses the wrong thing, and he becomes a supervillain that day. Well, let's just say that a politician selling his soul to the devil, that's going to be a big part of it. There's going to be, I'm trying not to spoil it, but there's like a whole group of evil devil worshiping politicians and businessmen and, whatever bankers that are ruling the world secretly, but on whose behest? If they reveal it to be the creatures that I have, let's just say, like, I know you'll get, but my comic is superheroes plus Dungeons and Dragons with H.P. Lovecraft mixed in. So, I'm trying not to spoil it, but I want to try it out. Like, I mean, I want to shout it out what the conspiracy is, but I'll just say it's not shape-shifting reptiles, because that's been done to death, and it's not Nazis. Oh, I have one Nazi story, just because the villain is so freaking cool. One of the super teams is going to crash land on an island, and the people there are Nazis that don't know the war is over, and it's more tongue in cheek than that. But the bad guy is so cool, and I've been thinking this, Bronick, bro. Like, people just be like, oh man, he's defaulting to Nazis. But I also have a World War II superhero team that I want to debut. Mary Sue, here's a spoiler. In her 4th appearance, she's going to meet a retired 40s brawling superhero who's going to train her to fight, because she's
very cool.
a 105-pound Chinese girl. You know what I mean? So she's not going to fight. She's going to get her ass kicked in issue. What do you see issue 2? This poor girl. I feel people are going to accuse me of misogyny when I'm going to put this poor girl through. So she's going to learn, I got to fight. I got to learn how to fight. And I can't take on 16 guys. Like, she's got cool powers, but if she gets, if they get their hands on her, she's toast. So, and then I'm hoping that he gets popular enough that he could tell stories back in World War II of the original super team from the 40s. There's always an original super team from the 40s, or you ain't doing comic books right, or you ain't doing superheroes right.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you almost have to, because that's really the goal. Well, I mean, no, early 40s, yeah. So that's the golden age.
Right.
You like it all pretty much starts there anywhere you go. So like it's like if you're reading like an H.P. Lovecraft story, like, you don't really want it set in like 1989 Charlotte or something. It needs to be in that nice 20s New England setting.
Well, in issue 2, I'm hoping you get a little bit of a Lovecraft vibe from the villain. And I'm sure you of all people are going to pick. You're going to see the D&D references. I mean, it's literally a dungeon crawl. The patriarch goes on a dungeon crawl in issue 2. The name of the story is Subterranean Homesick Blues. A kid falls into a sinkhole. You all see those news stories. Billy fell in the well, and the news cameras all out there. They don't know how to get him and everything. And of course, Lucius Kane's like, well, where's the patriarch? Where's the patriarch? This kid's been stuck in this hole in the ground for 18 hours. Where's the patriarch? You cut to the patriarch. He's making romance time with his wife, because he's a happily married man. And they turn the TV off because they want to spend time together. She's like, oh, yeah, the kids. He's like, yeah, I'm staying home today, because yesterday was issue 1. I fought a meteor. I did all this. You know what I mean? So he's like, I'm going to stay. I'm kind of sore. And she's like, okay, I'm going to go take a shower. I'll make breakfast. He comes out, and he's gone, because he made the mistake of turning the news on, and it's all over the place. Billy fell in a well, So now he's pissed off.
I love the fact that the thing that can injure the patriarch is special loving time with his wife. He blows out his back there. His villain's no problem, but
he's not Superman. He's not invulnerable. It's funny, because Marcus Kelleher always gives me crap for saying, who would beat the patriarch? What about Spider-Man? I was like, oh, Spider-Man would kick the crap out of the patriarch. And he's like, you're not supposed to say that. I'm like, no, I kind of like the fact, like, the patriarch is in my world, he's high powered, but in a Marvel world, he would be low powered. In the DC world, forget about it. He wouldn't less. But because it's based on my role playing game, Village of Vigilantes, and the Village of Vigilantes system, you roll a die 6, and that's how many powers you have. So, and it's not fun when you roll a 1 and your buddy rolls a 6. So I made finagle factors, but So my game is a little bit more powerful than if you actually just buy the out of the box, but it's lower power. You know what I mean?
Bionic Brother says, "Screw kryptonite. The blue
So
pill will kill him."
it's funny structure. If I was to sneak up to him and punch him, I was like, you take him out. Like if he's not aware to repel your attack, he's gonna. And if you saw the first issue, Dr. Robug finally figured out his abilities. You know, Robug did the one thing because he's had thousands of hits, so he was repelling all of these. He was exhausted. You know, the way telekinesis works in the game is you're repelling each individual attack. So like another behind the scenes thing at the beginning of the game, the guy had a Tommy gun, and the patriarch basically psyched him out. Like, you know, I'm gonna if I. He basically told him I used my X-ray vision and molded that. And he was totally bluffing, and he knew a Tommy gun is like the one thing. Like he has to repel every one of those bullets. It's exhausting. He has to concentrate. So while he's doing that, one of the girls could have stabbed him, you know, killed somebody else. So he was like bluffing, hoping that, you know, Boss Moxie would fall for it. So he was actually pretty relieved. So yeah, he's got. I call it Marvel weaknesses. He's got logical weaknesses. You know, now Dr. Robug, you'll see he's gonna be a big threat if you know if I ever get to probably around issue 5 or so, he might come back. The blue pill will kill him. Now he don't need the blue pill, man. He eats healthy. He works out. You know, only 40. It's only 44. You don't need a blue pill yet.
Yeah, give him another 10 years. So speaking of villains and vigilantes, now that you're sort of like building up this stable of villains and superheroes, are you at all thinking of doing a campaign guide?
Yes, I am. When I made see nobody wants that card. I just bent it. When I made the stretch goal cards were character cards. So this is Dr. Robug. And on the back, it has their villains vigilante stats. So if anybody buys this 40-year-old game that probably is collecting dust at a game shop someplace that you've never heard of, or more likely came out before you were even born, if you buy this rule book, it's still $5. If you go to Fantasy Games Unlimited, you could still get, I think for $7, you could get this now, you know, plus shipping. I can't do anything about that. And you get these cards, you could play my characters. But I called Scott Bizarre, who owns Villains Vigilantes, and asked the permission, and he gave me his blessing. He was just like,
nice.
Quite frankly, he was like, I didn't know people were still interested in my game. I was like, I still play it. I have like the only Villains Vigilantes active web forum. How old is that? A forum? For those of you who are interested, www.villainsvigilantesforum.com. It's you could get all the spoilers for my comic because they're all ripped off from my playing sessions, and you can see who secretly runs the world if you're clever enough. I lost my train of thought, but he said maybe when you got like a couple of issues under your belt, you could make a campaign guide. I was like, absolutely, I would love to, but I said my only thing is it has to be a physical book, no digital download. Like I want it printed. And he was just like, well, let's get to that bridge before we cross it. So that's fair enough. And if that doesn't happen, or even if it does, I would like to make my own role-playing game. You know, that's what I'll talk to you. And I'll there was somebody else, Adam Lawson. He does. So he like, we'll consult you guys or whatever. Because I kind of have a system that I want to use. Like it has to be mind, body, spirit. So everything is mind, body, spirit. Mind, body, spirit are the main 3 areas, and then each mind, body, spirit circle is going to have attributes attached to the mind, body, spirit, and where they overlap. So some powers are just mind and body. Like if you're non-corporeal, you don't have a body; it's just mind and spirit. If and if you're telepathic, you know what I mean. So it's going to be different for different powers. So like Xavier would have a low body stats, but a high mind stat. You know, he would have a low spirit because that guy's always turning into a bad guy.
Creep, man.
Yeah,
but trying to lusting after your students, that's bad.
Lusting after your students in the Micronauts miniseries, he turned into the Entity, and then later on he turned into Onslaught. You know, and now he's living on Krakatoa, going to Hellfire galas with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, I don't. You know, it's funny because I was reading sort of a best of the X-Men, like the best arcs, and they put Krakatoa as number two. It's like, oh my
Well,
God, it's so
to be honest,
bad.
I can't judge it because I never read it. I just saw what everybody was saying about it, and when I was like, because I quit Marvel and DC in 2015. Like I have every X-Men comic up until 2015, and me being an anal retentive, I was a big fan of the continuity of DC of Marvel. Like I liked, that the blue area of the moon was consistent in all the comics, and then they turned it into the Kree, and it made sense, and the Watcher, and I loved everybody building on the next guy and nobody stepping on. Every once in a while there was a little clash, but then they made a story to fix it, and then all of those guys died or retired, and now they got new people that just have either no knowledge or no respect for the continuity. And I call it lifting their leg. They just want to lift their leg on these characters. They want to make their mark on the, like, how dare you? That's Captain America. You don't get to make your mark. You get to play with Captain America. You get to twist him around and then put him back on the shelf for the next guy to play. Like, I don't want Nick Spencer's pee all over my toys. You know what I mean? Like, so, and I just was like, I remember one day I was reading a Black Panther comic written by what's his name, Ta-Nehisi Coates. He was the celebrity writer, and I'm just like, this guy does not understand Marvel continuity. He doesn't understand the history. Like, and one of the things he said was, the Wakandans have the cure for cancer, but they're withholding it until the rest of the world elevates to their level. I'm like, so then they're supervillains.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so Nana died because she didn't meet your criteria. You guys elect your king by combat. What level do you live on? And I was like, I can't deal with this. And I noped out. And the DC was easy because they always restart their content, like, to the point I was like, how can I get invested in this? Oh, Firestorm's really good. Oh, it doesn't matter. He's somebody else now. He's a totally different character. So I noped out. So to make a short story long, I didn't read the Krakatoa, but I saw every 4 months they were going to the Hellfire Gala, and they have Captain America dressed up going to the Hellfire Club. These people didn't read the Hellfire story from the X-Men. That was a sex trafficking.
No, they think it's good.
Right.
See, they didn't get the trafficking part. They just saw it was like a very sex positive thing. And they're like, yeah, we like that. Let's do that.
Right. If you remember the very first time Kitty Pryde, 13 years old, she meets Emma Frost, and she goes, that woman looked at me like I was a piece of candy to dangle before people. And she immediately knew that. So, I mean, I have no problem with Emma Frost weaseling her way into the X-Men because she's a mind control creature. You know what I mean? That's what they do. They weasel their way. Like, somewhere along the way, they have to be like, we let Emma Frost into Xavier has to, like, we let our guards down. We got to be better than this. And, they got to redeem themselves. Like, that's one of the outs. They could say that Emma Frost did a whammy, or I have a story to fix Marvel, but they'll never hire me.
That I mean, that's funny you mentioned that, because that's exactly how I felt about Grant Morrison's run on the X-Men. I really don't like Grant Morrison as a writer. Maybe if he had like his own universe or his own IP,
I totally agree.
I would consider writing that. But like,
you want your own characters, that's fine. That's why the Watchmen, I don't like the Dark Knight Returns because I just don't like the way they treated Superman. I thought it was disrespectful to Superman. He's never going to be the government yes man stooge. But the Watchmen, they're all a bunch of degenerates and whatever.
Yeah.
But they're his own characters. That's fun. I love the Watchmen. I agree with you. Yeah, do whatever you want. But I do like Grant Morrison. I think at the beginning of his career, when DC had a more of an editorial reign on him, they really like the Coyote Gospels in Animal Man #5 is one of the best comics I've ever read. It is like it is so good. That comic alone gave me so much, credit with Grant Morrison. And then his Doom Patrol run, he made up. He quickly ushered out all the other Doom. added in, except for Robot Man, everybody else was kind of his own creation, like Crazy Jane and all. And he did whatever he wanted.
No problem with that.
Yeah, I absolutely love that story. But I think he did a pretty respectful Green Lantern run, but his X-Men run, I don't know, it was like edgelord stuff.
Yeah, it was like the 90th of the 90s stuff.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it was the Ethan Van Sciver sex issue that got me out of comics for like 10 to 15 years.
Really?
I just remember reading this, and I noticed like in every panel, the artist wrote sex in there. And I'm like, this is way more interesting than anything that's going on with this story. I think I'm done. But, and then I checked out, I hate his Superman run too, the All-Star Superman. It's just like, I heard before I read it, because I read it a while after it came out. Like I heard him giving an interview at like some Comic-Con or something. And like he was talking about how Superman would be on a farm, like using a tractor. Like that's who Clark really was. And I was like, oh, maybe he understands. And then it's like, oh no, it's disappointing.
Yeah, Grant Morrison has got to the point where it's the cult of personality. Like just imagine, I'm directing a movie. I wrote a script. The studio gives me money. I'm directing a movie, and it's just like, oh, you got Jack Nicholson. That would be the worst case scenario, because I'm a rookie director, and now I got to tell Jack Nicholson we need to do another take that wasn't good. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
I think that's what happened with that movie Wolf. He just went in, did his blah, 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 you know what I mean, and left. You could get a good performance if you're a Martin Scorsese, out of him. Like, I got Leonardo DiCaprio. Like, this guy is just gonna like, in between getting new girlfriends, he's gonna spit out some. But so I think that's Grant Morrison. You're gonna get some 22-year-old, minimum wage editor telling Grant, "No, this story's no good. We got to fix this." You know what I mean?
Yeah. For you, are there any?
Are there any? Okay, well, you're fired, Yang.
Yeah. For you, are there any of those guys who like really started in the 80s and the 90s that you would really want to see take over a series? Because I'm thinking about not Grant. You've got Alan Moore. Like,
I still love Alan Moore, but I like Alan Moore when he does his own stuff, like his Tom Strong series. Yes. That's kind of the vibe I would like to go with in Heroic Tales. If somebody down the road says, it kind of reminds me of Tom Strong, that's awesome. I mean, I'm nowhere near it. I'm saying I would like to be like Alan Moore. Don't compare me to Alan Moore. But I do think right now, but Alan Moore is a crazy person, so who knows, but yeah. Mark Miller loves Superman. He loves the character, but Marvel and DC can't afford him. He literally said he's waiting for Batman and Superman to go public domain so he could do Batman and Superman stories. Yeah. He doesn't want to work for Marvel and DC anymore.
Well, I don't know, because he has said that he's trying to encourage a lot of his friends to like take a financial hit and do some stuff just to reinvigorate the industry. Which, I mean, to some extent, it sounds cool, but I don't know. I don't know how that would work out practically.
Mark Miller, if you're watching this right now, write a fantastic story and hire Renzo Rodriguez. He's ready for prime time. He's a phenomenal talent. I don't mind if I lose him to Mark Miller. Mark Miller bought a comic, said it was good. So I told Renzo, I said, "You're going to be working for Mark Miller. Said, remember me when you're a millionaire." And he said, "Well, when I'm a millionaire, I'll do your book for free." So that's a legally binding contract between two different countries, just so everybody knows.
Totally. I'm actually looking forward to this week, Mark Miller's Vatican City with Narwhal.
Another boy
looks pretty cool.
Yeah. Narwhal was working at a deli 2 years ago, and now he's making comics for the most successful comic book writer in history of comics next to Stan Lee.
Yeah, the guy who can still turn a profit.
Right. Not just turn a profit. You sign a 4-issue deal with him, you're a millionaire. Because per Berg, Narwhal, he's getting to taste the movie. Like, that's the way it is. If you work for Mark Miller, you get paid for the art, but you also you get movie rights. So, he's last time he was on my channel, he was in his house, but he had a parka on because he couldn't afford the heat. I bet you he can afford heat now. Yeah, I'm so happy for him. It's so cool.
Yeah.
He's one of us.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully, I'll get him back up.
He's such a
It's
good.
been a
He's like
while.
the most likable person in the world too.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been to my local, which is no longer very local comic store. But I'm thinking of making the drive out to
Oh,
to
you
check
you
out
live
that
out
issue
by
on
here?
Wednesday.
Oh, you're gonna get
No,
yeah.
no, 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 not by him. But there used to be a few comic book stores near me within like 15-minute drive, and now it's like the closest one's like a 35-minute drive.
Yeah,
So I don't go out nearly as often as I'd like.
yeah. I'm a bad person. I get my comics from Discount Comic Book Service, so I put in my order, and then that box shows up once a month. Like I got to give a shout out. This Roll Me Turtle #2. The colorist is
Nice.
Oscar Carano, who's coloring the Mary Sue story. It's so good. It's Jack Kirby meets Mobius, and
Oh,
so it's Jack Kirby meets Mobius, and that's the creative team, and the concept is the Roman Empire meets superheroes. I
oh,
mean,
that's cool.
it's a comic book made for me.
Huh. That's it. All right, I'm gonna have to check that out because I want to see if they say that there's anything different between like a superhero and like a demigod, like because it seems like Hercules and Odysseus, they would be the superheroes
Right.
of that age.
Yeah. So little spoiler alert. I if I make it to like 10 issues or so, I want to have a comic set in ancient Greece. One of the stories, and
Hmm.
that's basically what the Olympian gods are the superheroes. Did you lose me? When a guy's
Okay.
casting lightning bolts, he's today we call him Electro, but back then we called him Zeus.
Yeah.
You know,
Very cool.
somebody's talking about conspiracies. Like it all starts like in there's Atlantis, there's Mu and the Lemuria. They go to war, and I it goes back that far, and
Wow.
yeah, and there's other planets. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but I got to get there. And you got to step your toes in the water. You can't. Like I was gonna jump in full, and like the first issue was like, and then the universe was created, and it was world building the comic. It wasn't a comic book, you know. So I scaled back and I said the patriarch is a good way to introduce people to me. So there you go.
Hmm. So for anyone watching, if you're on YouTube, on X, or on Rumble, check out the chats, and there is a link. And on YouTube, there's a link in the description to the Fund My Comic. Um, so is Fund My Comic now your preferred
Yeah.
crowdfunding platform?
Yes. For those of you who don't know, it's the newest one. It's probably the smallest one. It's growing, but I don't understand loyalty to a platform. I'm loyal to the product. Like if
Mhm.
you're on Kickstarter and I want, like Josh Howard is on Kickstarter, so I'm going to Kickstarter because I want to get Josh Howard's new stuff. He's got an art book that's
Yeah.
ending on Kickstarter today. Like I think Brian Bow does Wolf and Batsy. I think he uses Kickstarter. So I'll go to anything. So I'm kind of hoping that people feel the same way about me, because like a couple of people got kicked off of Kickstarter. People
Mhm.
get shadow banned on Indiegogo. So Luke Stone, who owns this, I got his phone number. Like I'm starting to realize I'm very predictable. 2 days before I go live, I call Luke Stone in a panic, and he calms me down. So I don't get that personalized calm down service from Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but I get it from Fund My Comic. So let I hope that's a tradition that I get to break. I don't,
Mhm.
and and I like it, but I also realistic. I got to make, because each comic funds the next comic. I paid out of pocket for the first comic. That was fine. I spent way too much money because I didn't know what I was doing. Like I said, all those mistakes at the beginning. But the money that I raised for issue 1 is paying for issue 2, and I streamlined it down. So and now for issue 2, I'm hoping to fund issue 3. So please support me, because I can't make a comic book on $1,000. Issue 2 is coming out. It's already paid for. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
already it's coming out hell or high water. But issue 3 is contingent upon this campaign. You know, I had a pretty good
Yeah.
first day. I'd hate to think that I'm in the doldrums. It's always rough in the middle period, but you know, I'd like to
Yeah.
think maybe after tax day, people will be willing to.
Have a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also, I want to point out that you are over your $1,000 goal. So if you decide to back this, you will definitely get it.
Yes, I put the goal purposely low because
Hmm.
it's ridiculous to think that I can make a comic book this good for $1,000, but it was already paid for. So I didn't want to make
Yep.
it $6,000 and then it's not going to come out, but it's already paid for. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
so I made the goal low just because it's going to come out, if that makes sense. So like
Hmm.
even if I made $1, it was going to come out because it's already paid for. Right? I would already make one copy, but it's coming out because you know, the money's allocated, it's sitting in the account. You know, I'm paying the art for it. I'm paying, you know, the coloring for it, the pre-press. You know, everything is paid for. So hell, this is coming out, and like I said, I'm ahead of the game. Renzo is a he. He was going to be done with the Patriarch. He's already done with the Mary Sue story. It's colored and it's lettered. So the Mary Sue story is put to bed. The Patriarch story, he was halfway done, but I asked him to stop to do the stretch goal cards because I was just hoping that we
Okay.
were going to hit stretch goal after every $1,000. I'm going to do a stretch goal card. So I was, you know, we didn't hit the first one yet. So I'm hoping I didn't waste his time by making him do that. But if I didn't do that, the comic would be done. So he's going to be done,
Oh,
I think, in 2 more weeks, and then we color it, letter it, and I might cross my fingers here. I'm jinxing myself. I might even ship this one early because I was 3 weeks late with the last one. My goal is to be at least 3 weeks early to balance the karma.
well, yeah. I mean, I think people are pretty
Oh,
forgiving, especially.
I'm making the big deal about it being 3 weeks late. I'm the only one complaining. Everybody else is like, dude, I didn't even realize it was late. You know, if
Yeah,
I shut up
well,
about it, nobody would know.
yeah, especially compared to most crowdfunders. I mean, 3 weeks late is like 4 months early.
And I hate to say it, but you know, because I tried to, you know, I believe in individuality and freedom, and you know, I tried to, but there's people who are like, dude, I've been burnt so many times, I'm not backing your book. I have somebody who I'm personally friends with is just like, I'm done with crowdfunding. You know,
Yeah.
they will buy my comic, they'll come to my house and buy it, but they're not gonna crowdfund it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I can definitely understand a lot of people with that, and it sucks. But I have a feeling that's sort of where a lot of the sort of the indie industry is heading to, just in the sense that, one with the economy, two with how things have gone in the indie scene. Um, not even in necessarily our corner of it, but a lot of things don't get made, or at least for a long time. But I can see people saying like, I want to make sure that it's in
Right,
stock. I'm actually going to get what I pay money for, and I can understand that.
right,
It's just it sucks as the creator because you need that money to develop stuff.
right. Like guys at work, you know, I'm trying to explain to them about crowdfunding, and they're just like, what am I buying right now? I'm like, my comic book. Well, when do I get it? 9 months from now? They're like, no. Like I when the comic came, I brought about 80 comics to work
Hmm.
and sold them at work. You know what I mean? Because these guys were just
Yeah.
like, you know, they're realistic, regular normies. The norm crowdfunding is a hard sell to normies. You know, so I don't blame them. So like I did a lot better than I thought. Like I don't know if you know Paul Thera, who does Project Analysis. His
Hmm.
crowdfunds do, you know, his crowdfunds do a little less than my last crowdfund, but this guy's making thousands upon thousands every week in person selling comics at conventions. You know, so it's
Yep.
enough that that's his full-time only job, and he's got a wife, he's got a kid, he's got a house, and he's selling comics, and he's branching out making other comics. So like
Nice.
my comic did a lot better than it looks because I sold a lot in person to guys at work, to friends and family. But the thing is, that money was $10 in my pocket, and then I went to McDonald's on the way home. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
should have transferred money to the account, and I would have had more money in the account. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whenever there was a guy I would talk to on the subway every day, and he gave me $10. And the next day I met him and I gave him a comic, and that money went to gas for my car. And I feel like, oh man, I should have put that money in the special account. But what am I going to do?
Yeah, but I mean, it's one of those things where I think, especially over time, and you build up a bigger library, I think it becomes
Right.
easier to sell. It's just, getting over that hump. Is getting your own website to sell from directly something you're thinking of, or
I'm
maybe
I'm thinking
keeping?
I'm thinking of it because I would like to have like when I got more pages, like come here and get this back issue, put up every card so you could click, because I'm making 20 cards for this comic, because this between the villains, monsters, and cameos, there's a whole bunch of cameos. In the Mary Sue story, they're studying the superheroes. So there's just like cameos of superheroes, you know what I mean? So each one of those gets a card. So there's 20 cards. I would like to be able to put them up, and you could click on the card that you want to pick. Oh, I'm missing this card, or this pack or this pack, things like that. Coins, glasses, T-shirts. I got a lot of merchandise already, and you don't want to clutter up a campaign with too much. It gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think this campaign is the fine line between complicated. I've seen campaigns that I'm like, I just don't understand what you're offering. It's too much. So
Yes.
like I got a digital, then I got a digital tier, so you could get issue 1 for $6 on digitally. Then you could get for $10, you could get issue 1 and 2. Then you could get the comic. Then you could get the variant of the comic. Then you could get both comics, and then you could get issue 1 and issue 2, and then add-ons, various covers for issue 1. I mean, it's pretty simple. And then there's original art by Renzo, which are one of a kind. So once they sell, they're gone. But
Nice.
I'd like to do a store someday, But right now it's like issue 2 has to pay for issue 3, so this could be the end. You know what I mean? If it doesn't, I can't make another comic book for what I've raised already.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can see it doing quite well. Oh, you've got a lot of artwork on this one.
Yeah. The Mary Sue story, it's finished, it's colored, it's lettered. I just didn't put the letters up here. It's the best work that Renzo ever did. It's so good. He loves this character. He wants me to do more with this character. Because everybody says Renzo draws such beautiful women. You got to have female characters. So I was like, all right,
Yeah, I mean, you got to give everybody what they want, and
yep.
I mean, it looks fantastic so far.
Yeah.
You still got your pint glasses.
Yeah.
Still got your challenge coins.
Yep. That's all the cards. You could get a pack of the 7 cards from issue 1. So, 4 of the cards got unlocked as stretch goals. So if, in the first campaign, you got the Patriarch, you got Boss Moxie, you got Maul and Dame, but Robug, Gams, and the suit, weren't available, but you could buy them. So if you go to the first campaign page I added, you could pick them up for $2 a piece for anyone you missed. And I'm not gouging anybody. I think I'm literally making like 30 cents a card, after paying for the art, paying for the shipping, paying for, to make them into cards that they had to hire a person to format them properly. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, justifying the cost. And then you get a pack of 7 cards for $10. And then I'm going to make like, when issue 3 comes out, I got 20 cards. So I think I'll make like a pack of 15 for 10, $15 for 10, and another pack of $15 for stuff. And then maybe $25 for all 20. Got to give you a little bit of incentive. Oh, Michael Dale just says, I just ordered the physical number 2 covers and a t-shirt. Woohoo!
Ooh.
Thank you.
Michael, which t-shirt did you get? Did you get the Patriarch one or the Mary Sue one?
I'm very, Yang knows me by now. He knows like a superhero has to have like I'm old fashioned when it comes to superheroes. Like I keep saying that the name is the focus. It's like a pyramid. Everything
Mhm.
drops, and in the corners you got the powers and the costume, and then in the middle of the pyramid it has to be the symbol. That's
Yeah.
how I create a superhero. And they all have like the angles could be different, but they all equal 180 degrees. So I want like as few lines as possible. The name has to describe like Mary Sue is her given name, but if you should know that means she's perfect and everything. But the symbol, I was really proud of this. It's you know it describes her because it's supposed to represent the apostle Paul, the apostle Thomas, doubting Thomas.
Mhm.
He had to see with his own eyes the wounds on Jesus's hands. So in my eyes, it's not official, but in my eyes, he's the patron saint of scientists.
Oh,
You know what I
interesting.
mean? So when she was being
Yeah.
teased in college, she joined a group of other good Christian, you know,
Mhm.
scientists, not Christian Science. That
That's totally different.
that's a different thing. So it's a group of, as her friend calls it, the science nerds, and so she wears that as her lucky shirt. She gets her powers. It becomes her costume. So, I described it to Renzo, and he was like, "You got to draw this because this doesn't make sense." So I drew it horribly. That's another thing I want to do. Somewhere around issue 3 or 4, I would like to do like an art of heroic tales because Renzo has all of these wonderful sketches, and that if you scroll up to that opening page of the patriarch and his wife in bed, what he submitted was a lot more explicit than what I was like, we got to throw a blanket on that. We got, you know what I mean? So like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you'll see the original sketches in the art book someday, and then like, so I want to put my art that I sent to Renzo. Believe it or not, I draw out all the characters and send them to Renzo, and then he make. So I just think it would be funny to see my kindergarten level artwork, and then Renzo what he turned it into, and I do the same thing for Oscar. Oscar Carano is drawing a comic called Eddie is Doomed for me, and I sent him sketches of all and they both said the same thing, that they really appreciate it, that it's very helpful because I had it over here, but I put it on the table to show my wife. I had like a sketch of the characters, and I wrote down what
Mhm.
colors they are, and then like,
Oh, nice.
you know what I mean, and then like
Yeah.
why I chose this and everything like that, and so Renzo was like, yeah, he goes, it was like laser focused, crystal clear what you wanted me to draw. So I'd like to put that. I think would be funny, like my sketch of the patriarch, his original sketch of the patriarch, and then how he tweaked it a little bit, and then, since I'm just a writer, I'll put like maybe like a DC Who's Who, a Marvel Universe write up about some of the history and powers and stuff like that. And then maybe somebody sent me a wonderful email, like a 6-page essay asking me questions about my philosophy as superheroes. So I said to him,
Mm.
"I'm saving this someday, if you don't mind." So I said I might use this in like the art of heroic tales. He goes, "As long as
Yeah.
you credit me." So I think that would be a good way to like to balance out the sketches with some like nice content and everything. So I got a lot of plans. I want to,
Yeah.
you
I,
know,
I think too that kind of stuff would be good for your game.
yeah, yeah. I've been playing Villains Vigilantes, no joke, for like since 1985.
Mhm.
How many years is it? So I got billions of superhero characters. That's why I chose Heroic Tales. I wanted every issue to be another story, but I also wanted each issue to be just a brick in the wall of the world, and you'll see what's going on. Like I got a team that I think I'm going to introduce in Heroic Tales 5, that they're going to discover something about the world. It'll make sense to you because Patriarch saw this, but they saw this, but the Patriarch and this team don't have that connective tissue, but you as the reader do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's not all powerful, he's not all omniscient, this. So like, oh no, don't do that. That's why so and so is doing this. So maybe when they confront the bad guy, you as the reader will be like, this is, Patriarch doesn't know what he's getting into because this guy knows this, or you know, I don't know. And I'm hoping you of all people will pick up some of the D&D references. Like the whole nature of the universe is inspired by Law and Order, Chaos, and all that
Oh,
wonderful Michael
nice.
Moorcock stuff. You know,
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely curious to see where the series goes. I mean, the only thing that frustrates me is I almost wish we were on like the old school, Marvel and DC got an issue coming out every month type
yeah,
of
I would love
type
that,
of
but
thing.
I think Renzo would die. You know, because I want
You'd
him.
have to,
I want him to
yeah.
draw it, but I've seen other people reach out to me and their art. One guy, his art looks just like John Byrne.
Oh,
It is beautiful. I'm like, oh my god! But he lives in Tokyo, so he's really expensive. You know what I mean? I got to pay him rates to live in Tokyo. So maybe someday I would love to. You know,
Tokyo's kind of cheap now.
it is all right. Yeah, the
I don't
tariffs.
know if.
Trump broke the tariffs. I guess maybe I could afford
Oh
it.
well, yeah, no, but yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, the guy could be really good. I don't know about his price, but yeah, Tokyo is actually the cost of living especially compared to like New York right now is
Yeah,
pretty good
if you
if
live
you
in
get in
New York,
dollars.
don't even ask me. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. Yeah, so anyone who is interested, go check out the campaign on Fund My Comic. And are you thinking of doing like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo later when this is
Yes,
finished? Or
I thought I started saying that, but then I distract myself. Um, I was talking to Luke Stone, the owner of Fund My Comic,
Mhm.
and I said to him, I go, I want to do a Kickstarter too. I made $1,000 on Kickstarter. I'm too small. I can't say no to $1,000.
Yeah,
And Luke said, John, go get that money. Because he knows if I don't raise a certain amount, there is no issue 3. So
exactly.
if I do, ultimately it's going to help fund my comic if I do well on Kickstarter also, because I want to be exclusive to fund my comic. I
Hmm.
want to dance with the one that brought me. You know what I mean? That old
Yeah,
expression. So I want to be on Fund My Comic. Like Indiegogo, I had 10 sales. They shadow banned me. Why do I want to deal with that nonsense again? It was difficult to
yeah,
work with. Um, Kickstarter's got problems. That whole survey thing is just an extra step. It's
yeah,
it's I still got 5 people that never filled out their survey. I got 5 people that paid for my comic, never bought it. I mean, it's nice, it's pure profit for me, but I want them to get their comic. They're not gonna buy issue 2.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
they're gonna be like, that guy never sent me my comic. So that's short term money. That's not long term money. So I got problems with Kickstarter. Fund My Comic, not one problem. You know,
Well, that's the way to go.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
The only problems
yeah.
was me not understanding what I was doing. That's not the site's problem. That was a me problem. And
Well, I mean,
thank you, Michael Dale.
mhm.
It just showed up on my phone. Woo woo! It's funny because every time I get a sale, my wife yells downstairs, "You got a sale!"
um, yeah, I mean, I think now that you sort of got things streamlined, it should make the whole process easier, faster, and hopefully cheaper.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I know who I could work with. I know what to do. I know what questions to ask. So I would like the first time I was doing it, I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Now I think I got the 1,000-yard stare, to use military terms. Like I could tell when people are scam artists. And you do get a lot. As soon as you launch a
Yeah.
crowd fund, you get private messages from people. I did a rookie mistake of saying I need somebody to I said I need somebody to design logos, and I just put that on Twitter. Oh my God, was that a mistake? I got like six. I'm not even joking. About 600 responses that I'm weeding through, and I think most of them were just like AI people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Well,
and now it's probably even going to be harder to weed out the AI people. This was like 2 years ago when I first started the whole process. But luckily I found 2 guys, that do great work, reasonable rates. If anybody needs
that's good.
logos, Nick X, Nikaxe, great guy. Great,
Yeah, I
great work.
I I had that problem a few years ago. I was starting to get art for my book, And I put out on there like, yeah, if anyone has art somewhere like John Buscema or 1980s Mark Silvestri or Frazetta,
Yeah,
black and white.
yeah, those guys we could afford. You got somebody that talented.
Yeah. Well, like in that vein, in that art style, and then I put in parentheses no manga, and like, man, I got hundreds, and like I can't tell you how many like furry artists. You know what I mean? Like, what in that ad made you think I would want
Why
two
not?
dogs having sex?
Oh, okay, that is different. But I could see like furry animals because I love
Yeah.
Usagi or Jimbo. You know what I mean? So I didn't think of that kind of furry. I was thinking of you know, as we used to call them, funny animals back in the 80s and 90s.
I mean that would have been better, but even that is like still pretty far
Yeah.
from
Well,
like Buscema.
so I said I needed a graphic artist and I needed a logo artist. I got a whole bunch of what a coincidence! A whole bunch of hot women that were graphic artists and OnlyFans on the same link. Oh,
Wow,
wow, you're multi
amazing.
talented. Yeah, yeah.
Although that it really makes me wonder if you're making more money doing graphic design
No,
than
it was just a
OnlyFans.
way to send me an OnlyFans link.
Yeah,
I
I
was
know.
like, okay, all right, and then ultimately, if anybody here is thinking of making your own comic, I cannot stress enough to work with people that either or your buddy knows. Like
Yeah,
if you ever need anybody, I got a list of people that I would recommend. I the best thing I did was because when I started my YouTube channel, I had no intentions of making a comic book. It was during COVID. I just wanted to talk comic. I moved out here and I didn't know anybody, and I was like, I'll talk on the internet, see if anybody wants to talk comic books with me. You were one of the early people that reached out to me, and next thing you know, I started meeting talented people who make their own comics, and that's it. I saw RJ from the Fourth Age. I love the art in Thomas Valiant. I was like, this guy is like,
Mhm.
if John Byrne and George Perez had a talent baby together, it would be Renzo Rodriguez. So I asked RJ if I could reach out to him, and he's like, yeah, I can't be the only guy paying his income. So
Yeah,
and then Renzo and I just hit it, like we call each other on the phone and just talk. Like I
that's
think,
cool.
yeah, I think that's like the level of friends. You know what I mean? Like I keep saying, guy, if I hit $10,000, the $10,000 stretch goal is Renzo comes here to New York. We get him some New York pizza. We get him to see just how disgusting Manhattan truly is,
Uh
and
huh.
then we sign comics together because people like, can I get it signed by Renzo? I'm like, yeah, but he lives in Mexico. I have to ship it all the way to Mexico, all the way back. It literally, when I sent him his package, like anybody who works on my stuff gets a box of everything. I
Yeah.
sent him a box of everything. It took 2 months, to get there. So
Yeah, that's the problem. Do you think that he would be shocked at just how bad New York is? Because when I lived in LA, and occasionally foreigners would come over and through different associations, like I'd visit with them, and they'd be like, "I want to go to Hollywood," and then they'd get there and they'd be like, "Oh God."
yeah, yeah, Hollywood is gross. I've been to Hollywood.
Mm.
The I'm biased. I would rather go to New York than Hollywood because Hollywood is just like a dirty suburb. Like LA doesn't
Yeah,
really have those like skyscrapers and stuff like that. Maybe it does.
yeah,
Maybe I was in the wrong spot. But New York, I work in New York. I'm a construction worker right now. I work in the tunnels below New York. But like the other day, I almost lost my temp. Well, Friday. So here's a New York story. Friday, I'm all in a good mood. My campaign's launching. I talked to Luke. Everything's approved. Campaign's going good. We got everything. So I'm on the phone going over my campaign. Smile, this is gonna be awesome. Sitting on the subway. Guy gets on the subway. Big homeless black guy sits and he stares at me and goes, I'm gonna kill every white person I see, every white man I see, and they're women. So I'm just like, okay, this is gonna happen. Put my phone in my pocket, put my glass, and I'm just, as the kids used to say, mad dogging him because I don't know what he's gonna do. He just threatened murder, you know what I mean? So I'm on the subway and I'm like, if I get up and move, is he gonna hit me in the back? like I got to get up. So I'm like, I'm just staring at him, and he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him, and he just like put his head down and got off 2 stops later, and I'm looking around. Nobody else is gonna help me. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm like, that's New York. And then I get off the subway. There's a guy laying on the ground, pants are down by his knees, body fluids all over the place, vomit all over the place. I got to step over him. There's a bridge. I call it the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. I got to go over the bridge, but it's warm at this particular subway. So it's all filled with homeless people, warm puke smell. And then when I come home from work, it's 12 hours later. That guy's in the same position. I don't know if he's dead. And I'm just like, welcome to New York, ladies and gentlemen. This is New York. This is New York. The New York that you see in the Hallmark movies. And there's a reason why every woman in Hallmark is leaving New York for the farm, because it's beautiful on the farm. New York is just like, I kind of want to make like a Twitter, it's not anonymous now, just called New York is Gross, and just put disgusting pictures in New York. Like, this is the real New York. The only time it was good was when in my lifetime, the only time it was good was when Giuliani was the mayor.
I remember that time.
Matter of fact, it was so good people were complaining, because they were like, yeah, I go to Times Square, I'm trying to get a hooker, and it's all Disney movies. I'm like, what do you want? What do you want? Do you want gross New York, or do you want like clean New York? You can go out to dinner with your family.
They needed to keep like one 3-block area that was gross, and like, here, go do whatever in there.
It's funny that you said that.
It's nice,
because a friend of mine lives in Singapore, and he said that Singapore is so clean and so regulated that people would leave Singapore to do all their filthy stuff. He goes, there's a certain percentage of population that's going to do bad things, and I'll leave it up to you to what they're leaving for. He goes, but the thing is, they would leave and come back with diseases or come back with drug habits, or you know what I mean? So Singapore was like, okay. So my friend Bob said that they knocked down a couple of square blocks and rebuilt it to look dingy, but it's really clean. And they have whatever you may want here, where they could control it.
Yeah.
Like my mom, when I was a kid, 14, 15 years old, we would sneak out and drink. So she was just like, go drink in the garage. You're going to do it. You drink in the garage. The rule is, if you go drinking, you're sleeping in the garage. You and all your friends, you're not going home. So no drinking and driving, no fist fights. You know what I mean? No getting girls pregnant, because nobody wanted to hang out in my nerd garage.
That's what they do in Tokyo. Actually, I lived very close to a red light district when I lived there, and like, outside everything is super nice, but like, you walk in this like 2-block area that was right by a train station, and it's like, you go through there at night, and there'd be like girls grabbing on to you, like, oh, come to our brothel, or I never saw any drugs, but it wouldn't surprise me if there were some there. But there were definitely Yakuza there, and it was like, ugh.
Yeah, my buddy Yoshi, his mother's from France, his father's from Tokyo, and they lived in America. Go figure. But he would go to Tokyo every once in a while, and he would just he's very logical. So he's like, this is the quickest way to walk home. So he would walk home, and I guess he walked through that neighborhood, and people are like, you don't want to go there, it's bad. He goes, I live in Queens. Goes, they're like, but there's Yakuza there. It's like, Yakuza isn't going to bother me. You know what I mean? Yakuza is there to Yakuza is there to control the real bad problem. A guy walking down the street, is no, just like the mafia really doesn't kill regular people. The mafia the mafia kills all the mafia guys. Regular guys got nothing to fear from the mafia. If Felsberg says truth, there's a reason John Carpenter made Escape from New York. Yeah, and that's my same friend Yoshi. He said that there's a legit, maybe you know about this. There's a legit psychological conditions. He says that the Japanese are infatuated with Paris. And
yes,
and they will save up their money, and they'll go to Paris, and then they'll see how disgusting Paris actually is, that they come home and they need counseling.
Yes.
So you heard about this too. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. It's like, I've seen people do this in other areas too. Like, it's like when you have something that you believe and like is the core of your reality, and then something breaks that,
Right.
it's like, and people have psychological problems, and that is definitely one of the things for Japanese. I can't.
Yeah,
There is a term for it, and
yeah, he's a
can't
term
think of
for
it.
it. And he told me, and I can't remember it, but I was like, oh my God. You know, I I could see you go to Paris and there's homeless people just in the streets,
Yeah,
garbage. And so let me just stress, New York is gross. If you come here, it's gross. You know, I I I, I went into a Wendy's today for lunch, and there's a guy sleeping on the floor in the Wendy's. You know, the machine didn't work. There was no ice. And all I could think of, like, because I've been watching, I don't know why, since I'm interested in going to Japan. I saw a video that you could buy like houses out in rural Japan for like 3,000
yeah, yeah.
American dollars.
They'll give you a house.
Right, right. And I'm like, will they give it to me as an American? Like, do you have to be Japanese? So I'm like, I'm a construction worker. I'm an electrician. I can fix it up. And I'm trying to convince my wife. I'm like, we'll get our tax returns and buy a freaking house. Like, and then we'll retire in Japan. There's no crime. The healthcare is great. I said, so we got to learn Japanese. That's a fair price
Mhm.
to pay for like a lifetime of like, I mean, 80s. We don't have to worry, and the house is paid off. You know what I mean? So now I'm in the algorithm. I get all of these Japanese videos on YouTube because I watched that one video, and one
Yep.
of the things a guy said, he same situation as my friend. He both of his parents are Japanese. One grew up in America, Japanese, and one grew up in Japan. So he goes back and forth. And he keeps saying, he goes, I never thought of it. He goes, but America is a dying country. He goes, if you went to a McDonald's in Japan, the shake machine is working. There's toilet paper
Yep.
in the bathroom.
Yes.
The salt and pepper shakers are there. There's napkins there. There's straws there.
Mhm.
He goes, there's a guy cleaning. He goes, you go into the subways in Japan, there's people cleaning as you're walking
Yep.
around. You go into the bathroom, there's person cleaning the bathroom. He goes, New York. He goes, there are home. The difference about New York, my friend Yoshi was, what, hikikomori, is that the word? He says, like,
Yeah, yeah,
it's mental people. Like, I do believe that most people who are homeless, it's not because they just economically, they're crazy. They're crazy people, and their families can't deal with them anymore, or they don't want to deal with their family, or they're violent. But in Japan, that's shameful, so they lock them in a bedroom. They got like 10
Mhm.
million people who would be homeless.
Yeah.
Instead their families taking care of them. But other than that, like, New York is gross, guys. What do you want me to say? It's the worst place in the world to live. It's not even a great place to
Oh,
visit. I'm
yeah.
so
I
glad.
mean,
I mean, a woman got set on fire on the subway. Another guy,
yeah, that was crazy.
another guy came on the subway, said he was going to kill everybody. A guy defends himself. He gets arrested. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that woman, because there's like definitely Stockholm syndrome in a lot of New Yorkers. Like they just don't acknowledge how bad it is. So I got a cousin who lives, I think he's in Long Island. He and his wife and his kids, and he's got to go into Manhattan often for work, right? And so at Christmas he came and I was at my uncle's house, and they were talking about, oh, the oh, New York's not that bad. The crime isn't that bad on the subways. And I was like, well, what about that lady who just got set on fire? And his wife was like, oh, that was just the one time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, one time isn't enough.
Well, it was almost weekly for a couple of months of people getting pushed. Now they're talking about building plexiglass shields.
Yeah,
How
they
about we
should.
just arrest all of these people and get rid of them? You know, I read somewhere that there's 30,000 homeless people in the 5 boroughs alone. That's a lot of people.
Yep.
And New York City, in taxpayer money, is $33 million a year to deal with the homeless problem. So I got my phone right here. I'm going to do the math because my brain is bad. So 33 million, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, divided by 30,000. Okay. That's $1,100 per homeless person. That's rent. You
Mhm.
put 4 of them in an apartment, average rent in Manhattan is $3,000. you save it $1,000 if you put 4 people in an apartment. And they're all off the streets. They got a place to live, and then we could do away with all these offices and pension plans for, but they don't. Like something like I read LA has a ridiculous, like even more money for the homeless problem, and they're still homeless. We got 30,000 people. We got this much money, $33 million. Build a city upstate. There's nothing but farms upstate. Guys, New York City is mostly farms. I mean, New York State is mostly farms. Buy a bunch of things. Build like a Starrett City. Homeless people. You're homeless. I don't care. You got no choice. You go into this. You go up there. You live up there. It's like a nice jail. I'm too right wing, I guess, but no. Instead, it's more humane. Let them sit there in their own puke on 168th Street subway station. You know what I mean? That's more humane.
Yeah,
that's more progressive. And I worked in the tunnels, like below the subways, where the mole man lives. A couple of years ago, and there literally were colonies of homeless people.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even be surprised if there were people who were born, never saw the daylight. There's no birth certificate. They lived down there and died down there. So all I can think of is there's 2 things: either the powers that be want this going on, or they're taking the money, because
they're taking the money.
So that's it. That's why Doge everything. Get rid of everything.
When I lived in LA, there was a bill. Like people in LA have never met a tax increase that they didn't like, and so they did $1 billion with a B dollars in taxes to solve their homeless problem, which at the time was like 65,000 for the greater Los Angeles area. And so like 2 years later, it was much worse. And people started asking, what happened to that $1 billion? And they showed one building, which they put in 65 homeless people into this one building. And it's like, oh my God, $1 billion for 65 people? Like, it's crazy. Yeah, and then you get into it, and it's like the mayor, the building that they were put in was one of the mayor's associates, and they were paying 4 times this for square footage. So it's like all this, and then people were asking like, well, where's the other money? And he's like, well,
it went to Democrat fundraisers.
Yeah, and consultants. They had to have homeless consultants who just happened to be somehow related, like politically or familially, to the mayor.
Right.
It's like,
what are the odds that Nancy Pelosi's nephew, that Nancy Pelosi is Gary Newsom's aunt. So Gary Newsom's relative, Nancy Pelosi's nephew, Mitt Romney's nephew, Joe Biden's nephew are all executives in oil companies in the Ukraine, where we're sending billions of dollars that Zelensky himself said he doesn't know where it's going. And then Zelensky just bought controlling interest in a platinum mine in South Africa.
Yeah. Well, he needs somewhere to flee.
Yeah. Guys at work is like, well, they get rid of all these things. What do they replace them with? I'm like, well, when you have ass cancer and the doctor removes your ass cancer, what do you want him to replace the ass cancer with? And I specifically say ass cancer so they know how ridiculous they sound. They go, what do you mean? I go, nothing. When you take out the ass cancer, you leave it with nothing. I said, get rid of the CIA, get rid of the FBI, get rid of the IRS, get rid of the alcohol and firearm and tobacco. What the hell is that even exist for? Get rid of all of these homeless services. They're not doing anything. What I find amazing is we didn't even know that this US aid existed until Trump was in office. They didn't even know about it until people were just like, don't go to USA, don't go. And that they were like, why shouldn't we go there? So they started, and I think we're witnessing the last gasp. That's why they have all of these protesters that all happen to have the same sign, at the same time. And then at 12 noon, they all go home. I think we're seeing like the last bit of this money going away. I don't know. Just get rid of it all. Is the CIA really doing any good? What are they doing? They kill we found out that them and the Mossad killed Kennedy, and we're still funding them. Get rid of them.
in all fairness to the protesters, it does look like most of them are over 65. So
Right.
I could see them leaving early to get
Yeah,
the early bird
they
special
gotta
at
get
Denny's.
the early bird special over. Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because all the guys at work are like, "Oh, the stock market's crashing." I'm like, "Aren't you Democrats who hate billionaires?"
Yeah.
Now we got to protect the billionaires. I said, Do you hear yourselves? I said there was just as bad as a dip in the stock market when Biden was president, but the newspapers didn't tell you to panic.
Yep.
Now you're being told to panic. Knock it off. I said it always dips. It'll always come back. You know,
Yep.
the only
Well,
how's that for politics?
excellent.
Yeah.
And now that we have solved the U.S. political situation, everyone who's watching, go check out Heroic Tales comic number 2.
Please
Fund
do.
my comic. Uh, if you gotta wait, another paycheck or two, no problem. It'll still be here, or you can find it on Kickstarter. A lot of great
Yeah, the
comics, a
Kickstarter. I
lot of great
don't think I'm
merch.
gonna launch the Kickstarter until this has run its course. I don't want to undercut Luke Stone. So when this closed down, I'll put a Kickstarter. So I mean, you got plenty of time, which is really bad for me to say because you know back it right away. But this comic is coming out. It's already paid for. What you're really backing is issue number 3. So you will get a comic. You're getting 2 covers. I also didn't want to gouge people on people like, you're leaving money on the table. You should have 4 comics, and then everybody's going to buy 4 copies. Yeah, but I felt bad because the comic is half Mary Sue and half Patriarch, and if I only put the Patriarch on the comic, then I feel bad that Mary Sue's doesn't have a cover.
Yeah.
And then I would
Yeah,
have
yeah.
a back cover because I no offense to Comics Wellspring, I don't want their ad on the back of my comic. So then I would have. There was going to be 2 covers no matter what. So
Yeah.
this is a good way to do it. It's a flip book. Nobody else is doing it. I know this sounds like a sale, like a salesman trying to get you to buy, but it's the honest truth. For $10, 2 of these wonderful covers, great color. This is the best deal in crowdfunding right now. Name another comic book that you're getting this much value. I dare you. And if you do find it, let me know. I'll back that too, because I like comic books.
No, I mean this to me brings it down into the reasonable range.
Right.
There's a lot of stuff at like $25-$30 with shipping. Like it's just
I
too
can't
much for
do
me
anything
anymore,
on the shipping, guys. I wish I could, and it's not like I'm making a killing on the shipping. You know what I mean? I think people know that I'm being pretty reasonable. Everything,
Yeah.
Again, I have a luxury here. Like, I also don't begrudge the guys, the big wigs, I'm not going to mention names, who do charge more. That's their only job. That's their only income. And I understand that they're not going to make 40 pages of a comic and then see if people are interested. So they got to raise the money. I have a job. So this is a luxury for me. You know what I mean? So I can make it as cheap as possible because I just like doing it. If I don't make a profit, as long as I'm, not in the hole, I'll keep doing it. But I got to pay Renzo, I got to pay Oscar, I got, I got guys that I got to pay. I can't do it for free. But I have no illusions that this is going to be my full-time job, and I'm about this close to retiring on my real job. I'll get a pension. I'll be doing okay. I just don't want to spend $10,000 a comic to make a comic. You know what I mean? I don't mind spending.
Yeah.
I don't mind spending $1,000 a year to make a comic. That's a cheap hobby. Spread out over a year, it's cheaper than going to the bar. It's cheaper than football tickets, and it's to me it's a creative outlet. So that's what people like. You should raise the comic to $15, which I almost did. If you see some of my early previews, it said $15, and then I felt guilty. So.
Well,
I
don't think there's any need to feel guilty about making a profit, but I think you need to sort of balance everything out. Like, if you look at the iconic guys, they were selling, I think, around $10 when they started with Common America and Black Ops. So, there is something to say to like getting books into hands so that you start to build up
Right.
that crowd.
That's also my long-term scheme. Like I'm trying to think long-term. Like
Mm-hmm.
by the time I make issue 4, like Brian Bow did Wolf and Betsy. He's at issue 13. He's one of the few people in this past 6 months that made a killing on their crowdfund. He did really well. He was like, I hope I'm gonna make like $5,000. He made almost like 15,000. He
Nice.
was like, oh my god, but he had a lot of back issues, a lot of goodwill.
Yeah.
He's super talented. His comic is awesome, and he had 13 issues. A lot of people bought bundles, so I'm hoping to get more and more people. You know, issue 4.
Sure.
I hope I'm still selling issue 1. Like I just commissioned a second printing cover. It's gonna be so cool.
Nice.
It's gonna be like everybody. All the rage is homage covers, so
Mhm.
it's an homage cover, but it's not a comic book homage. You'll see.
Oh, okay. I'm looking
It's
forward
so
to that.
good. I can't wait. You know, some people are gonna buy it again just because the cover is so good. You know, so maybe I'll in issue 3 I'll put a second chance, second printing, and I'll fix the typos too. It's driving me crazy that there's 3 typos in it. But
So
there you go.
for oh no, go ahead. Sorry.
I said so there you go. Like you know, I'm not one of these SJWs like, don't worry, guys, I'm not making any money. Yeah, I gotta make money. I gotta. You know, it's the nature of the beast. You know,
Yeah.
so
Uh,
and each issue sets the budget for the following issue. So, you know, that's why I
yeah.
want to. I got a great team of guys. You know, I want to keep working with them.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get to see a lot more. Everyone should go check this out. And if you don't know, John has his own YouTube channel.
Yes.
Uh, go check that out. I believe there's a link in the description if you're on YouTube. Uh, go check it out. He's got a lot of great comic guests. He does get into a little bit of gaming, especially in his My Hand Solo series, where he plays by himself,
Yeah.
plays games by himself.
Yeah. I bought a camera. I set it up, and I'll play like. There's a lot of solo board games now. It's the new hotness. During COVID, a lot of people who are into board games all of a sudden, like they made house rules of how to play the games by them. But there's a bunch of solo games. I know it sounds weird. Like there's a game called Final Girl that is solo only. It's you the first, and I freaking love it. And then there's a couple of games like cooperative games where like everybody versus the game. You could play those solo. You know, so I play a lot of that. Like it's not going to make sense for me to play Magic the Gathering by myself.
Yeah.
What a coin! I just countered this. You know what I mean? That doesn't make sense. So I'll play games that would be good for a solo, like the. And then there's a game I just got called the Golden Age of Comics. There's a solo mode, and it's great because it's a board game about the Golden Age of comic books. Like,
That's
you
cool.
know, it was a no-brainer. I was buying that game. It's so much fun. I love playing it.
Very cool.
I feel, are you a board gamer? I know you're a role player. I know that's your big thing.
I like them, but I don't really have anyone to play with here. So occasionally a group of friends of mine will use virtual tabletop to play a game called Talisman.
Oh yeah, I got Talisman. I've never played it though.
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
It's oh my god, the online version is frustrating as hell. Um, just because like if you're playing with other people, you just have the number of players at the table. But usually, I think it's like you can have up to 6. So if there's like let's say 4 of you on the computer version, like the computer will add in a couple of extra, like computer controlled characters. No matter what, they always like seem to roll the highest. They land on spaces where they find the best items. It's like,
yeah,
what?
yeah.
Um,
Talisman is a it's like a 50-year-old game. You know,
mhm.
it's a roll and move, which is like right now that's like Monopoly is a roll and move. You roll the dice and it
Yeah.
tells you what to move. So it takes away a lot of the agency of the player. Like so like roll and move games are kind of like passe, but
Yeah.
Talisman is people like have a nostalgia for. So I bought a used copy, and I got to
Oh,
play
nice.
it, but it's like a 3 hour game, 3 or 4 hour game, and my friends now have moved beyond Talisman, so I'm like, they're like, nah, we're not gonna. It's like asking your board game friends, you want to play Monopoly? Nah,
Yeah.
we moved beyond Monopoly. So
But
like I'm looking around, like I still have Dungeon. It came out in like the 70s. Divine Right came out in 1979. I love these old. I love long, complicated games. Like
yes.
there's a game called Twilight Imperium. It's like there's board games and then there's Twilight Imperium. Like, and you say that to people, and people are like, yeah, that's like an endurance. It's like a marathon. Like you're playing, sitting around the table for 8 to 9 hours. Each person goes for an hour, and that person goes for an hour. But like you cater it. You know what I mean? You play it once or twice a year. You cater it.
Yeah.
We'll go to Cadoba and I'll get like a whole thing, or my wife will make a chili spread and stuff. I love playing Twilight Imperium, but
When
most people don't. They want to play a game in an hour, and I understand that too.
yeah.
But
Yeah, when I get to the sequel to my campaign guide, it's going to be like a different kind of game. It's still going to be like you have like a Dungeons and Dragons aspect to it, but there's also going to be there was an old game I played it on Sega. I think there was a Nintendo version as well called Nobunaga's Ambition, where Nobunaga was the Japanese samurai who united all of Japan under one rule.
okay,
And it was like a very cool game, like sort of like world wargaming type of thing. So my sequel will be a combination of that and regular D&D. And depending on what kind of game you want to play, like you could just do all D&D type adventures and all of the wargaming stuff happens in the background, or you could say like screw the adventures and you just do the wargaming stuff, and then there are like heroic people who show up throughout the world and they'll like help you fight your enemies, or they might screw you by disrupting your activities.
I know you play. Are you the DM when you play Dungeons and Dragons?
It depends. For now, because I'm still doing test groups as I'm like fine tuning the game for the final publishing. So for that, yes.
Because I'm always the DM. I'm the eternal DM,
Mhm.
and with Dungeons and Dragons more than any other game, it sooner or later the players want to get involved in a full scale war.
Yeah.
Do you feel that to me is the big weakness in D&D? It's a best to me is a group of heroes. Like, do you have full scale war rules? Because I know there was
Yeah.
Chainmail that was a full scale
Yeah.
war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in my campaign guide, like the characters are sort of set on an arc, that at least some of them are going to become like mythical demigods and stuff. And so when you start out, like I use the analogy of World War II, like it's D-Day. When you're at the lower levels, you're just hoping to get off that boat and hit the beach, and then you get a little bit higher level, and then it's like now you're the sergeant. You're still just hoping to hit that beach, but now you're responsible for other people. And then at some point, like, well, you're the guys who go in the night before to sabotage, the bridges and the Germans before the guys get on the beach. And like in the end, you're the general who's leading the charge. So at the end of my campaign guide, um, you're you need to get back to a place that's been completely overrun by an army of the undead. And how you do it is up to you. So you can raise armies and have the armies attack, and you're leading the armies. You could do it where you're sneaking in, Fellowship of the Ring style, trying to get through all of that stuff without being detected. Or you could do like a combination of the two, where your party is like you're basically in charge of how this invading army would attack, and when they attack, then you split off and like a single squad going to infiltrate the enemy with the distraction of a war. So it's up to you how you play that. But you could control as much of that army as you want, or you could control as little. And there's mechanics. So like the DM could just roll to figure out like what happens between the thousands of undead that are there and whatever forces you manage to get over. So that could all be in the background, or if you want to control it like unit by unit, that you're perfectly welcome to do that too.
Yeah, I that's kind of why I gravitate towards the superhero game, because it's just not
Yeah.
the spirit of superheroes to have long scale wars.
No,
This,
no.
yeah. So, but I remember we played Dungeons and Dragons before I even discovered Village Vigilantes, and like they would get to the levels where they would have followers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want you to have 70 knights. It's better when you're 4 guys sneaking into the undead. Now there's an army with you. And it like I was like I don't like that. And they were like, the rule book says I get followers and I get magic bears because I'm a druid. And I'm like, yeah, but now there's 60 guys sneaking through a dungeon.
Yeah, well, 60 guys sneaking through a dungeon, that means the dragon's going to pick up on you and probably eat half of those in one go.
Yeah.
But I do like that it gives you optionality so that, everybody's game is going to be different. And like you and your friends like a certain type of game, and then other people like a certain type of game. I like to give people options so you can play as much of whichever style as you want. So then it makes the world more dynamic too, because based on how your army does against their army, like very bad things could happen for you, or it could really help you to get in that area. You don't have to role play any of that. The DM could just roll some dice, okay, give me a minute, and then he knows what's going on, and then you continue with your adventure that way.
I remember we role played a siege. The orcs were sieging their town, and
yeah.
I just was like, hold on. And I just pretended to roll dice, and I just, what are you guys doing? So like if they did cool stuff, that swayed the battle. If they didn't do anything cool and clever, the orcs would win. But they were like, oh man, it was so tense. You were rolling those dice. And I was like, yeah, I was just making stuff up. Because I didn't have rolls for 10,000 orc army. With playing Dungeons and Dragons, there's 6 players.
Yep.
I got 6 players. You guys want to fight a squad of orcs? That's fine. But we got a siege. But I'm sure Yang will tell you, sometimes you just pick up the dice and roll it for no reason, just to keep your players on their toes, and okay, give me a roll, and then they roll a 2, and the 2 means nothing. You're like, okay, and you write something down. What happened? You'll see. You'll see.
Yeah. I like bringing out an egg timer too, and then I just just put it down.
God, I never thought of that.
They're like, what's that? What's what?
What do you do? I need my players. They straighten up when I go, I need you to describe exactly what you're doing right now. That's like, or one of the things I hate is we play the superhero game. Everybody rolls their initiative, and everybody that I play with is an engineer or they're some sort of scientist, so they know exactly what phase they're going, and they're keeping track of the phases. And then it's their turn, and they don't know what to do. Like, you can keep track of everything, but you don't. So, you're supposed to be moving as fast as the Flash. You got to do something. Like, okay, so you don't do anything next, and no. They're starting to realize that one of my players was just like, "Damn, John, we played 4 times, and 2 players have died already." I'm like, "Yeah, well, you guys made bad decisions."
Yep. Yep.
It's a superhero world. You're fighting supervillains. You gotta. Like, they're superheroes, and they found a dragon in China. Dragon was apprehended. It was one of the last Chinese dragons, and they split the party. Half the team wanted to free the dragon, half the team wanted to fight the Chinese army. And half the team died. I'm like, I didn't tell you to split the party. Had you picked one of the other and stayed together, you would have gotten a lot of experience points. But you guys wanted to bicker amongst yourself, and half the team died. So. It's not my fault, But I'm gonna go now. It's 10 o'clock. I gotta go to bed. I gotta wake up at 4 a.m. But I could talk all night.
Yeah. So anyone who's still watching, go check it out. comments pinned below. Heroic Tales #2. John, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.